Hello everyone, it's Benny, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you something a little bit simpler than usual. This is what I like to call the Dire Wolf Rock Paper Scissors machine. Why? Because the whole thing is built into a perfect 9x9 cube. And yeah, so as for actually using it, it's mostly what you'd expect if you ever played rock, paper, scissors before. There's two sides, one for each player, and each side you can either select rock, paper, or scissors. If you try selecting multiples, well, it just locks you out and picks whatever the last thing you tried putting in. So, in this case, I picked scissors. And for the other side, I can be a bit sneaky. I know they picked scissors, so I'm just going to pick rock, and I'm going to crush them. And hey, it's smart. It picks up on the fact that I win, and they lose. But let's show off the other things. If I picked paper, then oh no, I lose. And they, of course, they win. And of course, it also has draw detection, so if I have scissors, and they pick scissors, hey, it's a draw. And yeah. And once you're done with your rock, paper, scissors game, all you have to do is hit this reset button. And there's one on both sides. And either way, it turns off both output panels and turns the output display back to nothing. So now you're ready for your next game. And yeah, it's pretty small, it works pretty well, and I like it. So now I'm going to show you how to build this thing. So what I'm going to start with is how we're going to store our data. What's our memory going to be? How are we going to store if they have rock, paper, or scissors? And the way I like to do this is with an RS NOR latch. So I'm going to go with a one-wide tileable design. And the reason I'm going with this particular design is just because it doesn't use a bud switch. I know a lot of people for some reason believe you can't make a one-wide tileable RS NOR without a bud switch, but yeah, you can. This is all you need. This will set, or this will reset, or vice versa depending on how you use it. But yeah, there you go. Pretty straightforward. And yeah, so I'm just going to take this and I'm going to stack it 2 times because, well, each panel I'm going to have rock, paper, or scissors. And I'm going to go ahead and expand 5 and stack 1. That way, I go ahead and get my next one for my other player as well. So, this will be the memory to store whatever the players put in. Rock, paper, or scissors. Now, of course, now that I have this, I'm going to need some way to use it. And here's the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to have this whole row of repeaters. This is going to just be a reset line right here. When I power this, I'm going to say this input's the reset. Whenever I power this, it's just going to completely reset the memory. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have buttons over it, so every time I push a button, it will reset the memory. But what I'm going to do is, whenever they press the button, I'm also going to have a repeater that takes it into the set of whatever one that is. And this won't work just yet because the timing's a little bit off. So if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure I need to finish resetting last, don't I? Maybe I have that backwards. So let's try it the other way. Does this work? Okay, maybe this works. Okay, there we go. I know it's a timing thing, but yeah, there you go. And that makes sense, because this way it's turning off the set after it's turned off the reset. So, of course, the set's going to be the one that stays. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. So, whoops, no. 1 tick repeater that's there. Reset line. Whole bunch of, not half slabs. Whole bunch of buttons for the inputs. And I'm going to have 2 tick repeaters that go, not 3 tick, 2 ticks, that go into the set. So now, I can set And because it powers the reset line every single time, it will never let any more than one memory address be selected at a time. And that's what I really like about this. So now that I have a basic way of inputting something, and I can save it, I'm going to just go ahead and work on the input panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each player their own 4x4 square, just to have some ground to stay on. So each player has their nice 4x4 area. I would give them more, but hey, I don't exactly have a lot of room in a 9x9 cube. And yeah. So now they can stand here, and it nicely covers that wire, which is why I'm placing it there. And now they can just select whatever from here, which is good. But I also want a reset button for when everything's done, so I'm going to have the reset button go here, and I'll just go ahead and put a sign that says reset. And you can power from either side. So the way I like to do it is I like to just put a piece of redstone dust here, so it takes it no matter what, and then just use a repeater to send that into each side. That way, well, I don't get backflow. So for example, I press this button, it won't go back over this and into the other one and reset that, because the repeater's there. But now I can just press this, and it resets both of them, which is good. Now, of course, I'm also going to need the output display, so I'm going to get some redstone lamps, and some torches, and I will need to put a block under it. Otherwise, if I just do it, say, like right above it, then it powers the, well, that's not a good example, but I could put a lamp right next to it, and it'll also power that, because lamp counts as a solid block, and it's powering through that. So what I want is I just want a layer of blocks, kind of like this. And, of course, later I can just power these in there, however I want to do that. So yeah. And I can label these as, well, first I want to label this as the reset button, again. And I can label these however I want once I get the whole thing built. And yeah, there you go. I'm going to go ahead and cover up this bit. And I suppose now is a good time to just go ahead and add some display for what button is pressed at the time, because right now I can press whatever, and I don't really have any indication of what I've pressed. So I'm going to use redstone lamps again for that. And my method of doing this is pretty simple. I'm just going to use torches, kind of like this. And yeah, now whichever one's pressed will turn on. And yeah, again, fairly straightforward. The user input panel isn't really the hard part about this. So, redstone lamps again, I can press whatever. And great! So there you go. Panels are working, everything's nice. Although actually, before I move on, there is one more thing I want to do. I want to have some way to turn off, or well, I should say turn on, all the output lamps until I have at least one input in each of these. That way, it won't just stick on some input or something. I won't see any pre-calculation before I have both pieces of data. Just makes things look a little nicer. So, I'm going to be powering this somehow. And for that, I'm going to need some way of detecting, well, if I have both inputs on. And that can get a tiny bit tricky. Now, the actual logic for this isn't actually that hard. I could do something like, say, this, because these torches turn on whenever I press a button, because, well, that's sort of used to display the input. So what I could do is, I could place a wire above this, and it'll only turn on if at least one input is on, which is exactly what I'm looking for. And I could say if both inputs are on, so what I'll do is I'll have torches don't increase the repeater delay. I could have torches like this, and that way, these will only turn off if I have at least one input on, and I can just send that to power, well, all the lamps. And as you see, that works just fine. I can press this, nothing happens. Press this, nothing happens. Press both, And, hey, it turns off, just like I'm looking for. The problem with this is, I'm trying to make this in a 9x9 cube. And this single redstone wire right here, that sort of takes away a whole extra block I could use for logic down here, just for a measly redstone wire. So of course, being the efficient builders that we are, we're not going to do this. We're going to find a better way. And it's going to make things absolutely ridiculous. But that's okay. So first off, this one right here, I can just take pretty much as is. This one right here, what I can do, since I can't take redstone wire over like that, what I could do is I could take another torch like this, and use a repeater to power there. So now, I have this torch powering, whoops, and this torch powering, just like before, which only leaves me with this torch. And to do this, I'm going to change this up a little bit. I'm going to change this to a torch and wire, which is going to do the same thing. But what I could do is I can place a block on top of this and have repeaters going down like this. And yes, that will power this lamp, but it's supposed to power that lamp anyway, so it doesn't matter. And repeaters, of course, are not going to affect the lamps below, so it's perfectly fine. So this is doing the same OR function as just putting a wire on top, but this way it doesn't take up an extra block. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and change these to the up torches. This one's going to have a repeater going like this. This one's going to have a repeater going here. So with that, this is one of my 3 inputs, this is the upper, and this is the final. So if any of these 3 torches turn on, if I have any 3 inputs, then it's going to get power to this wire in some way. Now, the only kind of tricky part would be sending it over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to block this off, kind of like this. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that so I know what I have to work with. I'm going to eventually end up blocking it off like this. So, I suppose I could do it like this. Yeah. That appears to work just as well as the way I did it over here. The way I did it over here is I wanted to keep a block here just because, well, I have OCD. So what I did instead was I had the torches over here and just sent repeaters straight through. Whichever way you do it really doesn't matter. Well, yeah, it really doesn't matter that much. Unless, of course, I guess if you wanted to do it like this, you'd probably want to do it the other way, because otherwise you have this sort of weird gap with a torch in it. And that's not nice. But I'm going to be placing blocks here, so that's perfectly okay with me. Or am I going to be placing blocks there? Yeah, I'll go ahead and keep blocks there. So yeah, and that should pretty much conclude my input system. I can put in 2 things, it turns that off, and yeah, so it appears to be working just fine as it is. This is the input portion of it. And yeah, unfortunately with that, I'm kind of out of time because it's getting pretty late for me right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say this is part 1, and in part 2, I'm going to... Actually, yeah, I can go ahead and do this. I can go ahead and label this as rock, paper, and scissors. So, in a sense, you already have a rock, paper, scissors machine. This one just doesn't have wind detection. But I'm going to go ahead and do wind detection in a second part because I'm kind of out of time for today. So, yeah. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned. And I'll see you in part 2 where we'll implement wind detection. And by the way, feel free to try to implement your own wind detection in a 9x9 cube. It's actually quite a bit of fun to try and get all the compact wiring working. So yeah, hope you enjoyed, hope you learned, and, well, see you then.